This short video will explore some great approaches to textbook reading. Many university students struggle with this, but it's an important skill to have. The most important thing is being able to effectively prioritize your readings. Now, first things first. Most students are strapped enough for time anyways, and most university courses, especially in the Faculty of Arts, have lots of assigned readings. But the good news is, you don't necessarily have to be scouring all your readings with a fine-tooth comb. You just need to learn to read smart. Every week, it's a great idea to look at all your assigned readings and rank them in order of importance. And we'll show you how to do that in a sec. But the reason it's important is so that when you're tight on time, you're making most of the time you do have by reading the most important sources first. Figure out what you need to read and what you can skim. When you're tight on time and closely reading everything is out of the question, skim the less important stuff so that you can discuss it in class if you have to, but then after the lecture, you can go back and focus on anything that the professor made particular mention of. The most important thing to do is determine the favored sources. These are your high priority readings because your prof has deemed them especially important. Your prof has likely structured the course around these readings and will refer to them the most in class. These are often textbooks or course packs, and they will likely show up as assigned readings for most lectures in the class. These are non-negotiable and should be read very carefully. All other readings can now be categorized as supplemental readings, but we still have to rank those in order of importance. Keep in mind that a course may have two favored sources, so don't just classify all readings as supplemental once you've identified one favored source. I think all students intuitively know that some readings are more important than others, but not all understand why. A reading that poses an argument is likely much more important than a reading that only describes something but doesn't offer an opinion. If you can make that distinction, you can then determine what gets read and what gets skimmed when tight on time. The first roadblock is that textbooks are often set up to encourage learning by memorizing isolated facts. This often comes in the form of bolded keywords or definitions of keywords in the margins. This is a roadblock because a good teacher will test for your comprehension of the material, not how well you can regurgitate facts. So memorizing disjointed pieces won't help. You need to make sure you understand the concept when you're reading. The second roadblock is that learning is a slow process. It takes time to absorb material, and students often underestimate how long it takes. Skimming through chapters passively doesn't count as reading, and you will likely not learn anything by doing that. Make sure you start reading well in advance so you have plenty of time and aren't trying to read 8 chapters the night before your exam. Actively reading your textbooks will help you understand and retain the information you read much better than passively looking at your textbook. The SQ3R reading strategy is pretty simple and it's easy to remember. You want to start by surveying the chapter. This means looking at titles, headings, captions on figures, and reading the intro and conclusion to the chapter. After you have an idea of what the chapter is about, turn all those headings, captions into questions and ask yourself, what do you already know about those topics? Now you can begin to read. As you start reading, try to answer the questions that you generated in the previous step and carefully study all the graphic aids. At the end of the section you have read, orally summarize what you've just read in your own words. And the final step is review. At least once a week, try to go back through your notes to review them. Highlight and jot down notes in the margins for anything that doesn't make sense so you can be sure not to gloss over it later. You want to make your readings worthwhile, and if you're struggling with textbooks and just memorizing definitions, you might not be comprehending the material. By taking smart notes on your favored reading assignments, you can ensure that you're reading for comprehension. Our method is called the Question, Evidence, Conclusion method, and we go into more detail about it in your note-taking toolkit, but we'll give you a brief rundown of it here. The first step is to skip all the middle stuff and go straight to the thesis statement or conclusion. This is usually within the first few or last few paragraphs, but it might not be stated outright. Read these paragraphs closely as it's often difficult to find. Be patient and take your time. If you find the thesis statement, you'll be able to gain a general understanding of what the article is about before you even dive into the reading. Once you find it, turn the thesis or conclusion into a question and ask yourself what question is being posed to you, the reader. The last step is to skim through the middle section to find a few examples or pieces of evidence to support the conclusion to the question that you have already identified. Be sure to read the examples carefully once you've found them by skimming through the reading and write down the page number anytime you find evidence. This will make your life much easier when trying to relocate info in your textbook. And that's all there is to it. When you're done, you should have 1 page of notes with a clear question at the top, 4 to 7 bulleted examples with the page number you found it on, followed by a clear conclusion. If you're truly reading for comprehension, a typical article or chapter shouldn't fill more than a page of notes. This is much less daunting to review than paragraphs of notes written practically verbatim from a textbook. Chances are, if you take notes like this, studying won't feel like such a chore when it comes time to review. If you're interested in learning more, most of the information in this video was adapted from Cal Newport's book, How to Become a Straight A Student, as well as a YouTube video series produced by Samford University entitled How to Get the Most Out of Studying. We hope you found this video useful, and feel free to leave us a comment below or check out some of our other student toolkits.